Hello, welcome again to episode 39 of Teh Tarik with Walid. Today we are going to have Miss Hazel Poa, an NCMP from the Progress Singapore Party, one of two NCMPs from the PSP in Parliament right now. Yes,
Okay.
finally.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, democracy is a hard process, so yeah. Hi, hello. How are you doing, Hazel?
Hello. I'm good. And you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for
I
having me.
No, I already introduced you earlier. I've been wanting to get you in for quite a while, but I think you missed my DMs. And thanks to Jess for
Acting us.
setting
Yes.
this up. Yeah.
Mhm.
So let's get to it, right? So you've been
Right.
in Parliament for 2 years, but actually you've been in politics for very long, right? So since 2011, you were contesting under the NSP banner, right?
Mhm.
But based on these 2 years specifically, how would you assess your party's performance and your own performance in Parliament?
Okay, normally, this is not the kind of question I like to answer because I feel that self-assessment is hardly ever reliable. I'm more interested to hear what other people have to say about our performance in Parliament. So, but since you asked, I will attempt to answer this, and then after that, I would like to in turn seek your assessment of how you think we performed in Parliament.
Oh
Yeah.
wow, you are interviewing me now.
Yeah, you think you could just take leg, is it?
Okay, sure, yeah.
Okay. I think overall, I would say that our performance has been patchy, with lots of ups and downs. Um, Mangwai and I are both new to Parliament, although Dr. Tan Ching Bok has been an MP for 26 years, but he was a PAP MP. So I think the experience is rather different. We face rather different challenges. So in a way, we both kind of have to find our feet on our own. And I was in the admin service previously, and during my service, I have sat in parliamentary sessions before. So I thought I was ready for Parliament. But then when I entered in as an NCMP, it was like, oops, this wasn't quite what I was expecting. So it was it was actually more confrontational than I had expected. So the first year was a bit rough. And so Mama and I have to sort of like toughen ourselves up for the kind of scrutiny that we get. But the second year was a bit better. I think we are more experienced, more relaxed, and more ready. So, but regardless of the ups and downs, I think what we really value is the opportunity to raise issues of concern, and also to bring into Parliament the views on the ground that may not have been heard otherwise. Take, for example, our debate on foreign labour policy. Our position is that of priority for Singaporeans and reducing reliance on foreign manpower. During our campaign, this was the one issue that most people were telling us about it and they're most concerned about. So this is one of the first issues that we bring up in Parliament. But for bringing up that issue, we have had to deal with claims that PSP wants a closed economy, that we are xenophobic, or that we are racist, which is not the case at all. But on the other hand, we also get a lot of feedback from voters, from residents, that they actually appreciate our effort to air this issue, even though we get hammered in Parliament. And then more recently, of course, we argued against raising GST at this time because the timing is just not right. Cost of living is rising rapidly, and also we don't need the revenue at this time, which is evident because the government can give out a rebate package that's more than the GST revenue that they're raising, right? So that's proof that we don't need it now. And even when we do, there are actually other ways of raising revenue, and we've given a few of these alternatives, like having a levy on employment pass holders and recognizing land sales revenue as land sale proceeds as revenue in a prudent way. And of course, there's always cutting expenditure. And for the there are also some minority group issues that we raise, which is like, for example, the VDS. We raise the point that actually we should respect the right of people to choose for themselves. And although we were okay with some form of restrictions, but when the restriction came to forbidding people to turn up for work. We felt that was going too far and we objected to it in Parliament. So overall, I think that we have succeeded in raising issues of concern and presented alternative viewpoints, but of course, there's always room for improvement.
Right. Okay. So can I ask you? I will answer your question later. Don't worry.
Oh, later.
Yeah. So the VDS thing, right? That's interesting because it seems to me like politically that was a losing issue because very few people actually were on your side, right? On that.
Yes, it is really an issue that concerns only a small group of people, but we felt that there's a larger principle involved, and that is, as I said, people's right to choose and not to be discriminated because of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did see that, and of course there was some even anti-vaxxers that were associated with your party as well. I mean, not yourself or Manwai, but I mean, I think we all know. So I thought that was an interesting choice, right? The VDS to be an issue to be raised, because especially if over 90% of Singaporeans are vaccinated. But as you explained, perhaps it's a principle thing. And what is the larger principle there that you were concerned about?
That is people's freedom to make choices for themselves. And so in this case, we feel that those who chose not to be vaccinated should not be penalized too harshly for that choice. To the extent of them risking their livelihood, that would be going too far.
Right. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah. So thank you for your honest answer. Also, I didn't expect the first adjective you used to be patchy. So that was pretty honest. I think I would say probably the same. I mean, I would say it's a B-ish performance in Parliament so far.
Okay.
And I think so I think there are some criticisms towards Manwai which are unfair, and it comes from an elitist position, right? He doesn't speak English the way people are accustomed to seeing their politicians speak. So I'm not really interested in those types of criticisms. But I have to say that the PSP stance on Sika, which we'll get to, right? It did disturb me a little. Not that I think no criticism of Sika is allowed, and no criticism of our policy towards foreign labor is allowed, because I think all policies should be up for debate, right? I did feel that even though Manwai and yourself were not being xenophobic personally, I did think that it could provide fodder for such sentiments. So that's what I thought. Now, having said that, so that's my personal stance. Having said that, I also know that what you said just now, a lot of people felt that that was an issue that needed to be raised. And I think the fact that the PEP went really hard on that issue shows that they are not just responding to Manwai and Hazel and the PSP, right? They are responding to public sentiment on it, right? Because they really went out of their way to counter your arguments, right?
Right. And it's exactly that. We, although labels of xenophobic and racist were thrown at us, but I think that sort of criticism really puts the cart before the horse, because xenophobia arises because of Singaporeans' insecurity over their jobs, over their financial future, and the fact that there were certain incidents of xenophobia appearing quite prominently in the media and all that is actually proof that the people's concerns are not being adequately addressed. And so that actually gives us more reason to actually raise this and discuss this openly, and urge a review of our foreign manpower policies. It's no use keeping quiet about it. The problem is not going away.
So you think the rise in xenophobia had largely to do with economic conditions?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So you don't think that it was targeted, it was a racial targeting? So
No,
if
no.
let's say because I'm thinking if let's say if it were Italians who were uh, in the same position as the Indians, for instance, would we see that kind of xenophobia?
Actually, I think that in this case, it was because Indians was the group that rose most rapidly in a very marked manner compared to other groups. Like for example, I mean, what's the other comparison? Naturally, it will be China, right? We have a lot of people coming in to work in Singapore from China as well, but the rate of increase is very different. Hang on, just let me dig out my figures. I don't want to get Prof mad.
Yes, I don't need a POFMA for
Yes, it's for both our benefits. Okay, right. Now, in the years from 2005 to 2020, the number of EP holders from India to Singapore increased by 377%, whereas in comparison from China, the increase is where's my rate for China? 172%. So 377% compared to 172% is more than double. So really that is a group that grew disproportionately compared to other groups. So it's not really racially targeted, but it just happens to be the group with the largest increase.
Right. That is about skill set, isn't it? The rise is about it's a targeted rise because of skill set, isn't?
I presume you're referring to the fact that there are a lot of IT professionals from India. Okay, so if we compare that with other countries, like the number of if what you were saying is true, it is just a matter of skill set. We should see similar increases in other countries of Indian nationals going to other countries to seek employment, right, in the IT sector. But actually, for the other countries globally, the corresponding increase over the same 15 years is 55%. So 377% versus 55% in other countries. Again, that is a very that's multiple times.
What's the global rate for immigration in general in other countries? Because
I'm
I guess
specifically talking about Indian nationals.
Right.
I
So
don't have the figure for Asian.
okay.
Yeah.
Because
sorry.
I think that will be useful because Singapore does have a higher rate of dependence on foreign labor anyway, right? It always had, right? So maybe that baseline would be.
What I do have is that in UK and in US, their immigration rate is about half of ours.
Okay.
Okay, so double. So, but in this case, 55% versus 377.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
It's still about 1617. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for that. So we'll get to the allegations or accusations of xenophobia in a while, right? So, but before that, I just wanted to ask, do you coordinate with Manwai in terms of what you guys are gonna say? Because you guys are a very new party and there's only two of you. You know, if it's the PAP and even I think the WP, they run quite a tight ship, right? So, but for you guys, how does it work? Is it just you guys can say whatever you want? How much input does Dr. Tan get, or do you disagree with Manwai, and so on?
Okay, we do coordinate as far as we can for prepared speeches. So those, we actually have a small group discussion amongst the party to make sure that everybody is comfortable with the content. So the main gist that is brought agreement. But then, of course, in Parliament, situations will arise and then we have to respond on the spot. And that's when we have to draw on our own individual experiences to respond.
Right. So it's fair to say that the prepared speeches and the overall stances of yourself and of Manwai in Parliament, these are endorsed by the party and by Dr.
The main points are, even though the precise words that are used and all that is left to individuals lah.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much. So let's move on to xenophobia. And so I think you addressed this a little bit already, but maybe you can just elaborate. So do you think that the accusations that the PSP is being or was being xenophobic or is being xenophobic, do you think they are, obviously you think they're unfair, but why do you think they are unfair?
Okay,
Yeah.
we fully recognize and appreciate the contributions that foreigners make to our economy. After all, a lot of PSPCC members are actually business people. Like, for example, Manwai and I, we
Yeah.
both run our own businesses and we are employers ourselves. So we know how important it is that we are able to employ foreigners when needed, to have foreigners complement our labor force. And also, like Francis, our SecGen, is also, he ran various companies before, including MNCs, before he retired. And right now he's still the chairman of a listed company. So we fully understand the importance of having an open economy. It is never our intention to advocate that we close our economy. Our concern is one of degree. Where is the right balance? So this is where we differ from the DAP. You know, we feel that right now we have too high a reliance on foreign power, and we advocate that we reduce it. And we also want to underline that the government's first responsibility must always be to their own citizens first. So if you look at our recommendations, we've never asked for a total cut of foreign manpower, but it's only to reduce and also to impose a levy on the employment pass holders. And that's mainly because there's a bit of difference between EP holders and Singaporeans at similar salary levels. And that's the fact that employers need to pay CPF contributions for locals, but EP holders don't have CPF contribution. So that there's a little cost difference there, which we feel that levy can address. And it's also a good revenue source as well.
Right. So what would you say? Because there were a few business people who were saying that, oh, it's not that we don't want to get Singaporeans for this, and it's not just that foreigners are cheaper or whatever it is, and in a lot of cases they're not cheaper also. It's just that, one, the foreigners have the right skill set, and secondly, Singaporeans are not as hardworking or as determined as or whatever, or they do not want these jobs. So I'm sure you've heard those kinds of retorts as well. How would you respond to that?
I would say that, okay, partly I accept that in certain sectors, really there is a shortage of skilled people, local skilled ones. So we can adopt a sectorial approach. That means in certain sectors, we can allow a higher percentage of foreigners working, but at the same time, we feel that a certain time frame ought to be put to that, so as to encourage skills transfers to locals and for more effort to be put in to train locals in those areas with the skills that are in demand. I mean, we have been short of IT personnel for many, many years. This is not just a recent development, but very little has been done to actually train our own people, to drastically increase the number of people trained in this area. So definitely there's an area that we can improve on. If you ask employers, naturally they will always come out and, say the things that you've been saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much. So, another line of criticism perhaps towards your policies would be that Singapore's population is so small, so we will never be able to train enough people anyway for all these sectors. So we will always be more dependent on immigration than others, right? So
yes, like I said, I don't foresee that we will ever be able to totally do without foreign manpower, but it is a matter of cutting down. And also, I think one measure that we should always look at is our wage growth, and let that be the guide, right? We need to look at our employment rate or the other way around, unemployment rate for locals, but not only that, because unemployment rate doesn't factor underemployment. So in that sense, looking at wages is a proxy for measuring underemployment. Although I would wish that, after so many years, we would have come up with certain indicators that would allow us to measure underemployment. But if not, then let's look at wage as a proxy. Because if you're underemployed, then your wage level would be affected.
Right.
So if
Right.
we look at wage growth to guide us on where is the optimal level of foreign participation in our labor force, I think that will be good for all.
Right. And this would be dependent on sectors. This would vary from sector to sector.
Yes, there will be certain sectors that we do accept, they face particular difficulty in getting locals to fill the post.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I think that was a good discussion. So there's a question here by Arun. Given the recent developments on surrounding the on the Section 377A, he wonders what your or the PSP stance is. And before you ask me the question, I think Section 377A is going to be repealed. I mean, I think repeal is imminent. But what are your thoughts on that?
Okay. Personally, I'm for repeal. And as for the party, like I answered a recent question in Parliament about PSP's position on 377A. Actually, within the party, we do have rather strong views on two sides, and it has been particularly difficult to reach consensus. And so we felt that whilst we want to try and reach agreement on core issues, as far as possible for unity, but we also feel that there ought to be room for diverse opinions in others. So this is one area where we feel that we won't impose a party's position on our party members, but allow each to actually hold their own positions based on their own beliefs and values. Yeah. So I agree with you that I think there's likely to be repeal coming up because we seem to be hearing the right noises.
Yeah. So what's the middle ground then, if there is any, as a party member, right? Because this seems to be one of those issues where it's either or, right?
Yeah.
So
I don't see a middle ground actually.
Yeah.
Right? You? It's really either or.
Yeah, so this is where, I would say, like what Professor Tommy Ko said as well, right? For those who believe that it's a sin, right? Then there's a difference between a sin and a crime. So I guess that's where the middle ground is, right? Where there is repeal and then the religious groups are given the space to have moral stances on marriage and so on. I think that is as middle ground as you can get. I don't think there will be, as long as there's an assurance, like for me, I am politically quite liberal, but I am religiously more conservative, I suppose. And I think that's the middle ground. I think repeal, I mean, a secular state shouldn't weigh in on these issues, right? Or shouldn't be deciding who gets to do what on these issues. But at the same time, I guess that just that the religious groups get the assurance that they are allowed to have their ideas of what a marriage should look like. That's all. Not that it needs to be imposed at the state level. Would that be enough of a middle ground, you think? Or
I don't know. My own experience talking to various people, I find that it's a lot for a lot of them, the position that they take tends to be more not so how should I put it? Not so much reasons, but emotional. Sometimes.
right?
Yeah. So it's rather difficult for in such situations to really come to a compromise.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think I agree with you on that as well. As in, I see that people's stances a lot of times it's either or, and it doesn't seem that there's much middle ground here. But thank you for that. Is that the first time you've shared your personal opinion on this in public, or have you?
Yeah, I think
Oh,
so.
okay. So I hope a journalist picks this up and yeah, okay. So let's move on to the GRCs, right? Because I shared a quote from you at the IPS that you made, a comment that you made at the IPS forum
Oh dear.
last year. Yeah. So it was about non-Chinese prime minister, and then where you said your answer was super sassy, where you said we are not ready because the PAP is not ready, right? And but you also commented because Dr. Jelenko also asked you about the GRC, and I think you also think that the GRC should go, right?
Yes, I'm not in
Yeah,
favor of the GRC system
right.
because I feel that it's a system that allows people to ride on the coattails of others, and so it makes it less necessary for some candidates or some politicians to work the ground and gain the support for residents. Whereas if you have all SMCs, every MP is elected on their own merits. I feel that this will be a better system and will make our parliament stronger. And in terms of minority representation, I feel that we can achieve that in other ways. For example, we can designate certain SMCs to be for minority candidates, or we can even have an NCMP scheme for minority groups.
Hmm.
You know, in the same way that we have NCMP for oppositions, let's
Right.
have NCMP for minorities.
So let's say there are 12 minus X Malay
Yeah.
MPs and then 9 minus X Indian MPs in case
Yes.
nobody gets elected. Okay.
Elected directly.
Okay. So so your argument is different from some others I've had on because they said they do not think that racial voting occurs and therefore you do not need the GRC. But you are allowing for the possibility of racial voting still occurring, therefore we designate SMCs.
I think I'm open to that possibility. I'm not closing anything.
All right.
But I also feel that it is important that the minorities get sufficient representation in Parliament. Yeah, so I see that as a
Right.
sort of middle ground.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. I think that's pretty different from what I've heard from others before. So Audrey asked how to choose which areas for minority. Well, actually now it's already being chosen anyway, right? Some GRCs are designated for Malays and then others for Indians and others, right? So I don't see that there would be a different, as in it would be anything different. So Serming said if you designate a certain SMC as a certain race, it would form a conclave automatically. Well, we can't have an ethnic conclave because of the HDB EIP, right? So we will not have that. So I think that criticism probably wouldn't hold. So in the 1980s, right, when the PAP was introducing this. I don't know whether you've seen this video before on YouTube where Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, Mr. Goh Chok Tong, they were debating with Mr. Chiam Se Tong and Mr. Jufri Mahmud on the GRC, and Mr. Jufri Mahmud said exactly what you said, and Mr. Lee Kuan Yew said that the problem is sometimes the Malay or Indian MPs are extremely competent, but there is just no connection between them and the constituents, maybe because of linguistic or cultural affinity or factors or whatever it is. So would that be a valid enough reason to not consider your scheme?
When you say not consider my scheme, are you referring to
designate SMCs? Because then maybe Mr. Lee Kuan Yew was saying that the Chinese in that constituency would be feeling, why do we get this? And when we do not have a connection with the minority MP, why is it my SMC that got designated?
Okay. Right. I have thrown out two different suggestions, right? I think the NCMP one will probably be less problematic. But even the one where we designate constituencies, I feel that we can explore ways to make it more implementable. Like for example, it can be a rotating one, right? It doesn't have to be the same constituency all the time that is minority represented. It can be like, like the presidential election, right? Now we have also every few years, then it becomes
5 cycles.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's one option.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So that's another interesting one.
I mean, if there is the will to do it, there will always be ways to think.
I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. I think these are things that can be worked out if we agree on the principle, right? So Fadila actually asked, is the 12 minus X system similar to the reserve presidency? No, it's similar to the NCMP, right? So because now NCMPs equals to 12 minus X, where X equals elected opposition MP. So it could be 12 minus X, where X equals elected Malay MPs, for instance. Something like that. Okay. Okay, Ken. Thank you so much, Hazel. So if you have any questions, please. So Jess said excellent suggestion. I'm sure that was in no way biased or anything. So if you have any questions, please type them in. So I actually think that a 2-person GRC would be the best option right now. But I mean, I think your ideas are okay as well, because I think the idea that racial voting doesn't occur, I think it's a bit of a stretch. I mean, we don't know for sure how much it affects the outcomes, but if we say that racism still exists in society and then we somehow make the leap, racial voting doesn't occur, I think it's a bit strange. Yeah, it's a bit strange. Yeah. So, okay. So, why is the PSP okay, or why was Dr. Tan? I don't know what your personal stance is. Moving on to another electoral innovation unique to Singapore. Why is PSP okay with the NCMP but not the NMP?
I think that these two are two totally different things, because NCMPs will still have to enter Parliament through an election. We still have to win voters' support, work the ground. Take, for example, myself and Manwai, right? Our West Coast team actually got 48.3% of the votes versus the PAP team with 51.7%. So the difference between the two isn't all that great. But because ours is a first past the post system, so the PAP team become elected MPs, whereas we got NCMP seats on the basis of the 48.3% support. Whereas NMPs don't have to go through elections at all. They don't have to win any voter support at all. And that's a very fundamental difference. Secondly, I feel that the NCMP scheme is still considered like for example, what do we consider as a democracy, right? It means having the people's voice heard and represented. Not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily have to be a first past the post system. We have democracies with proportional representation system, where the seats are allocated based on the percentage of votes that we get. So for example, if you get 48% of the votes, you get 48% of the seats.
Yeah.
So I don't really see NCMP
Are you in favor of that, of changing it to a proportional representation?
Yes, I would actually.
Oh, okay, interesting. But don't you think if the system is changed to a proportional representation, voters would behave differently as well? They would be more circumspect in their voting, and probably the opposition would not. Probably PSP would not get 48% in East Coast or.
Well, I think that it is good for voters to become more circumspect, regardless of what outcome it gives to PSP in the end. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. That's a very democratic answer.
an honest one.
Yes, thank you so much. So there is a question by Ku CP. Any comments on the current SIRS fiasco? You know, the HDB, and this is a huge issue, right? You know, I mean it's in Ang Mo Kio, but essentially a lot of people are gonna be facing this as the flats get older, right? So what is the way out now that this has been institutionalized? Now that people have already, right, Singaporeans have already, it has already been drilled in them that their house is, their HDB housing is an asset. Right? Is there any way to get out of this?
Okay, to be honest, this is something that we have been thinking about for quite some time, but I still haven't found an option that I'm perfectly happy with. You know, every option has the pros and cons, and so I would say that it is something that we're still working on, but really it is a rather serious problem, and the Ang Mo Kio SARS, I think, brings it out very clearly. Exactly what is going to happen even if you are offered SIRS. You know, previously people think that SIRS is the solution. That, you know, as your flat gets old, you know, the government can just bring in SIRS and then everybody will be
Right.
happy. But this shows that it's not that straightforward. When the number of years of lease left gets lower, you're just going to lose value in that flat. So even the verse that was suggested by the PAP a few years ago, that, you know, after the flat reaches 70 years of age, there will be the voluntary en bloc redevelopment. And so that solution is not going to address the issue of, because with only 20 plus years left of lease in the old flat, the amount of compensation that the government is going to give will be very, very minimal. So a lot of people will be having to top up big amounts for a new flat. So, yeah, I'm sorry, I have no solutions to offer at this point in time. It's a work in progress.
Yeah, I wonder whether there is a solution in the first place, right? That will, what can happen right now once the HDB prices have been allowed to go up this high, and then so I wonder whether there is any feasible solution at all other than cooling down measures at certain times, certain periods, right? But the philosophy is that the HDB it wasn't seen as a house, or I mean, the idea is that, oh, you know, and also that there was something a bit flawed in this idea, right? That once your children move out, then you downgrade and then move to a smaller space, right? But then your house is also where your community is, right? You've built communities. It's not that easy for you to just do that, right? Yeah. So as Angie said, not without giant political fallout and economic pain for certain generations. That's true. So I wonder whether there is a solution without involving a lot of pain for some groups of Singaporeans. Now that this has happened. Yeah, thank you so much, Hazel, for that. So I wanted to stick to my promise, and it's already 40 plus minutes, right? So I just have one final question for you, okay? A very light-hearted one before I just let you give your final thought. So who is your favorite PAP MP other than other than SM Taman? Yeah.
Hey,
So,
Walid.
I always ask people this, you know, because in the spirit of reconciliation and conciliatory democracy.
Wow,
By the way, you know what Dr. Chi said? He said Lim Chin Siong, I think, right? He went to the 60s. He cannot even say it. Well, okay, I said now, you know. Now.
I plead the fifth.
Oh, so you are really pleading the fifth. Oh, okay. Okay. All right, all right. So since you've invoked the American Constitution, there's nothing I can do. Okay. So is there anything else that you wanted to say, Hazel? Anything that you want to share with people that people may not know, and you want them to know about you as a politician, as a person, or your party?
Um, I well, I don't know what people know or not know about myself or my party, but I think one thing I would like to say is that PSP is still a very new political party, and so in certain areas we have not been able to reach a certain consensus within the party for a certain position to be held. So I hope that people can be a bit patient with us and also be more forthcoming in talking to us. I think we are always open to communications and interactions with Singaporeans. Being a very new party, we're still building our grassroots and our contacts. So we would really appreciate everyone coming, approaching us to tell us what you think and to give us your ideas and your suggestions. We are more than happy to listen.
Okay. And on that note, thank you so much, Hazel. I really enjoyed today's conversation. It was very honest. Megan said you were honest about everything except the final question.
No, I was honest about that also. That I don't want to
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I'm always honest.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this, and I wish you all the best. I wish you all the best. Okay. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye bye.
Take care
Bye bye.
too. Bye
Bye.
bye.